Hi, babe, and welcome to the Sweet Spot podcast. This is the first episode, and I am so excited to be here. I feel like this has been on my mind and on my heart for a little bit of time, and so the time is now. And the topic for today is actually perfect because it's something that I literally had to move through to even get to this place of doing this podcast. And it is about overcoming fear and not allowing fear to sabotage what you want, not allowing fear to be this self sabotaging thing that is holding you back from reaching your goals because you have big goals, you have big dreams, and there's so much external crap going on that what you do not need is yourself holding you back. So we want to make sure that that stuff is cleared out. We have our own back and we can move full steam ahead towards our dreams. Okay, so let's get started. The thing about everything that humans do or don't do is it's going to come down to two things, okay? It's either going to be fear or love that drives every action that humans take. This is just hardwired into our, like, the fabric of our being. And this just goes back millions of years when we had all of these things outside of us that we like just needed to survive on a base level. And as we've evolved our mind, we still have that reptilian part of our brain that wants to keep us safe, right? Like, and anything new, our brain considers not safe. So even if it is something that we really want and we really want to achieve and accomplish, if our brain isn't on board and if our body isn't on board, then we will not take action. We will stay stuck. So I have a few tips and exercises that I'm going to run you through, and I'll give you some personal examples from my own life and how to overcome this. So the first exercise or the first kind of tool that we can look at is a fear setting exercise. And what we're doing here is like looking at the worst case scenario and actually spending time going into the worst case. Because what typically happens is like we think we know all these terrible things that are going to happen. And so it just like immediately shuts us down and prevents us from like taking action or even like taking a closer look. So we want to get out our flashlight and we want to shine a light on what it is that we're actually afraid of, right? So, personal example is whenever I was planning to quit my job, which I did about 4 months ago, it's like I had all these fears come up about like, what if, like, what is the worst case scenario? And what we want to do is like actually write out all of the worst case things. And so we can like dive a little deeper into them, right? And then we can also, in a column next to that, write out solutions. There's always going to be solutions to problems. If we don't even want to look at the problem, then we're also not going to be able to recognize that there's solutions, right? So for me, I'm like, okay, well, what if I don't make any money? Quitting my job, not going to have a steady paycheck. What if I lose all my money? So then I can think about, okay, well, I could always get a part-time job. I could always use my credit cards. I could always go back to full-time work if I needed to. I could possibly get a loan. I could possibly ask like my parents or a family member for money. Like, not to say that I would do any or all of these things, but just listing out possible solutions. This immediately gets the brain thinking like, okay, actually, like I would be okay. I would be safe. There are options. I am not helpless in this scenario. And then like another example would be I was like, okay, well, what if I can't pay my bills and then I can't afford my rent? So then I'm thinking like, okay, what are options here, right? Like I could move into a smaller house, or I could possibly get a roommate, or I could move in with my boyfriend, or I could, move back home, which hopefully does not come down to that. But you know what I mean? Like there's just options. So we want to look at solutions for our problems so it kind of just makes them less scary, right? And so doing that is so helpful, and just to like get clarity on what it is that you're actually afraid of. It's not just not making money, right? It's like, okay, well, what does that mean? And if we go like a few layers deeper, then it's like, actually, it's a security issue, right? Like, it's like at my base level of like security, my like root chakra, me being supported. And do I feel supported? And then thinking like, okay, well, how can I give that support to myself? Where can I look for evidence of all the ways that I have supported myself in the past? Right? Like I have gotten to this point. I am 41 years old and I, am independent, and I've always been able to take care of myself, right? So like giving myself that recognition of, yes, I am resourceful, I am resilient, I know how to take care of myself. And then like that even just like eases those fears. And then the next thing that we can do is like sit with the fear, like feel the fear, bring up the fear in the body. The mind is so, so powerful, right? And so like I love to talk and teach about mindset and about like visualization and how we can actually create the future that we want through the power of our imagination. So definitely don't want to spend like too much time imagining the worst case scenario, but in this exercise it is helpful because we want to bring up the emotions and like the physiological state so that it can pass, because you can actually only feel something in your body for 90 seconds at a time. And we want that feeling to pass. We want to feel the full range, the full depth of that emotion, and then we can let it pass. And then we can teach our body that we are safe, right? We're like training the body and the mind to feel the thing to then be able to move past it. So we're expanding our capacity to feel things that feel scary. If we feel things that are scary, but we don't allow ourselves to feel them, if we immediately brush them aside, if we immediately brush them under the rug or ignore it, or just say like, I'm not gonna like pay attention to that, then we never expand our capacity to grow beyond it. So another example would be even starting this podcast. And before I started the podcast, I had to get comfortable speaking live, speaking face to camera on Instagram, going live. And that took a lot. And even before that, it was posting on Instagram. It was sharing my voice, even in just like captions, right? And before that, it was even being comfortable. I remember whenever I had just started my business. I was like in the process. I was doing my certification for my coaching. And my Instagram had been private for years, and I needed to make it public. And I was having like panic in my body. I was terrified. And I did it, and then it's like the world didn't stop turning. No one cared. No one noticed. And for some reason, I had just built it up so much in my head. And so, like, after that, after you realize, okay, I'm safe, that's fine, you just continue to take actions that feel scary. So, making a post, sharing about my story, going face to camera. I remember one time I shared something that was really vulnerable on a post. And at the time it still felt scary to share about. It was whenever I was talking about my eating disorder that I had for 11 years. And like that's not something that I had ever talked about publicly. But I knew that it was an important story to share. It was an important part of my story to share. And I, again, had that like panic feeling in my body. And I think I woke up in the middle of the night and I was like, oh my God, I want to delete it. And I didn't. And like, it was just like, okay, like you do the thing. It feels scary. You go lay down, put your phone away. And then like the fear passes. And then on the other side of that fear is confidence, is courage, is exhilaration, and like wanting to do it again, right? But we stop ourselves from even taking the action because we are afraid of that feeling. So if we can induce that feeling in ourselves first, then we're like getting ahead of it. So super powerful. What we also want to do is, as I mentioned, like looking at the root of that first example with the money, which is like that's a security thing, right? So like with this example of like being seen, okay, well that's like a visibility thing, right? And like looking at like what am I actually afraid of here? Who am I afraid of being seen by? Whose judgment am I afraid of? And getting honest with myself. You know, is it someone from like high school that follows me? Is it like an ex-boyfriend? Is it a stranger in another state or country or like halfway around the world? And like getting curious about like what am I actually afraid of? And then like processing that, right? And being like, okay, am I going to let that stop me from taking the necessary action to reach my dreams or to reach my goals? And that has to come from the inside. So that has to be like self-recognition. And so fear will prevent us from seeing ourselves. And so that's why it's so important to really spend time with yourself and understanding and really validating yourself and not looking outside of yourself for validation. And so I struggled with this for so many years. I was constantly comparing myself, even like this was before Instagram, when it was Facebook then, right? I think it's just like so common to compare ourselves with our peers, with people that we like went to school with or that we worked with in the past or even family. And it's like there's just this level of inherent like comparison, and we can torture ourselves into feeling less than or behind. And this is like an internal game because it's not real. And the more time that you spend with yourself and understanding who you really are, what's important to you, what your values are, like what makes you special, what makes you unique, and really becoming that cheerleader for yourself and being able to have that kind of like as a resource that's always available, this well inside yourself of love that never runs out, right? It's like it's constantly filling that cup for yourself. And then you don't have to look outside of yourself for validation, for acceptance, for approval. So that is one way that fear will just like stop you dead in your tracks, is if you are waiting for someone else to give you approval, because it could be there one day and it could be gone the next. And you really need to be able to give that to yourself. So another thing that can be super helpful is recognizing that we also have this fear, can have this fear. I think a lot of us, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably resonate, but fear of not following through, right? Like fear of letting ourselves down. And that will also stop us before we even get started. And I know personally, like I had things in my past that I feel like I didn't do that well at, or like I let someone down, or this and that. And it's like that shame and guilt will like weigh you down. It will, if you choose to carry it with you, it will be like a ball and chain on your ankle, and it will prevent you from flying. It really will. This is also an internal game. Sometimes if there is another person involved, like for, like a conversation might need to be had, or like a forgiveness thing might need to happen, like writing a letter, doing like a cord cutting, lots of different tools to do that. But if you are allowing something from your past to prevent you from taking action today that then impacts your future, then we need to look at that, right? We need to shine a light on what that is. We need to get curious. We need to do the work to reveal like what the actual root there is, and then work to heal it so that we are not carrying any shame and any guilt within ourselves. And then this also applies to like self-trust, like everyone makes mistakes. There is not a single perfect person. Whoever it is that you look up to in your life, whether it be a real person, a parent, like a grandparent, a celebrity, an influencer, whoever it is, everyone has made a mistake. The most successful person that you know has made a ton of mistakes. But for some reason, whenever it's our mistakes, we put so much weight on them, And like, imagine that person, like from an external perspective, looking at you and like being like they're not worried about our mistakes, right? Why are we so worried about our mistakes? And how can we forgive ourselves, right? How can we accept that's what's done is done? Intentionally know that there's a lesson to be learned, and like embody that or integrate the lesson, and then move the fuck on, honestly. That's how you build self-trust, is by forgiving yourself from the past and still moving forward. So what we want to do is prove to ourselves that we can do the things that we say we're going to do, and we can take action towards our dreams. And so like it can be really daunting if we have a big dream and we kind of see like, first of all, we don't even know like what all the steps are. Like it's not like your dreams are going to have like a handbook of like 100 things that you need to do. Because with every choice and action that you take, it's like going to snake its way, and like new things are going to appear and all this, right? So the most important thing is taking the first step. And what we want to do is like break down that first step into micro actions. Break it down to things that you know for sure that you can do, so they don't seem scary. And even if it does seem a little scary, it's like, okay, I'm going to do the thing. I'm going to make that feel neutral in my body. I'm going to do it enough to where it feels neutral. I'm going to expand my capacity to do scary things, right? And then they're not scary anymore. So we break them down into like micro actions, and then we just like take the very next step. So what is it like? What is that quote? Something like a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. And it's so true. And if we can just take the pressure off of ourselves of having to do everything perfectly, of knowing there's going to be like a million things to do, or it's going to be hard, or this, that, the other. Again, all these like stories that we tell ourselves about how difficult things are going to be, when in fact, it could actually be easy. You can actually choose that it's going to be easy for you and see how that belief works for you versus the belief of it's going to be hard. And also like recognize the power of your mind to be a self-fulfilling prophecy for you. So if you expect things to be hard, they're probably going to be hard. If you expect things to be easy, your mind is actually going to seek out other solutions and opportunities and ways to make it easier for you. So that's a conversation for another day. But That is a way that you can overcome fear, build self-trust, build that recognition in yourself of, like trusting yourself, of taking care of yourself, of moving towards your goals and your dreams, and knowing that like just the action itself is the win. So instead of like thinking like this whole big picture of like, oh, I have this like huge goal that I want to achieve, literally that step, that baby step is the win. So you just want to like start stacking wins, right? Just like start stacking wins and don't worry about the outcome, because you'll naturally improve the more times that you do something, right? So that's pretty much it that I wanted to cover for today. And yeah, I guess just as like a quick recap, we just want to really like look at what it is that's scaring us, break it down, and realize that there's always going to be a solution to our worst case scenario. We want to sit in the feeling of our worst case scenario so our body doesn't have the same reaction to it. We can neutralize it in the body. And so then our mind doesn't associate it with being like a life or death situation. We want to build up this self recognition and that internal validation before we seek it from anyone else. And then we want to take small micro actions towards our goals and build that confidence in ourselves. So I hope this was helpful. I would love if you could share comments or feedback with me. You can email me, DM me on Instagram. If there's a place to put a comment here, you can do that too. But I'm so excited for this podcast. Thank you for being here, and I will see you next time.